Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and my guest today is Steve Rao, who is a political commentator on Pod TV and politician. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, it's an honor to be here, Sasha. I got to about 11:25. I have a work call today. Still got to make money,
No
right?
problem.
But
No problem. We will run through everything very
no, I'm
quickly.
sorry. I'll have to wrap up a little early today. But it's
Okay.
an honor to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah. First of all, there was a tragic night in Ukraine where there were heavy bombardment by ballistics and
Yeah,
drones. Now, the drones are not so scary for Ukrainians. They know how to defend against drones, but the ballistic is a different matter. First of all, there are hypersound ballistic against which uh, hardly anybody has a real defense. Okay, you can hit here and there, but there is virtually no defense. And so the question is what Ukrainians can do if Russians will continue every night killing dozens of people through ballistics, and Ukraine has no defense against it. So what Ukrainians can do except making your own ballistic and inflict such damage that Russians may think twice about using ballistic next time. So it will be inevitable damage. If Russians continue to hit Kiev, then Ukrainians perhaps have to hit Moscow just like that. What else? Am I missing something? What else could be done in this situation?
well, first of all, I think it's just we see this. Ukraine has done a really good job of expanding beyond the front lines and making sure that they're hitting Russia where it counts, either the oil refineries. I think recently there was another attack. I can't remember where, some kind of a warehouse. And I think they have to continue to do that. I think we pray for Ukrainian civilians who are dying or being injured, and the families all around the world who have to see their loved ones suffer in their homeland. I think that it will be important to get continued support from the United States. The concern I have is, with Iran, with the missile defense stockpile of U.S. could become limited. So I think this is a constant challenge, and I think it's also we're seeing continued focus on drones as a way to fight the war. So if there's anything we can learn every day is how the technology is playing such a big part in this war, and I think future wars will be defined by those who can produce drones cheaply. And of course, AI also can be used to weaponize many of these weapon systems. So that's what I think we have to do differently. Um, I don't really have a direct answer for you other than we just have to keep supporting Ukraine and making sure that their morale stays strong.
Well, I'll tell you that there is, in fact, not too many answers. In my opinion, what I'm proposing is perhaps there are some problems with that as well, but I just don't see any alternatives here. Since there
Yeah.
is no defense, that it's nothing to do with Americans. Americans have their own problems, and they produce too few many interceptors, and those interceptors needed elsewhere. So I'm surprised that Zelensky even went to United States asking for interceptors when it was obvious that the United States doesn't have enough interceptors for their own purposes, never mind their clients, whether it's Japan or Germany or anybody else, or Saudi Arabia. I don't know who else is using these interceptors. Um, so the alternative to what I'm proposing, just to if Ukrainians can take back and not hit Russia for say 2 3 days, and they make an announcement that each missile hit Kiev will be hit Moscow one for one, and ask, now you go ahead. Maybe that is, like for example in chess, the best defense is an offense. So maybe that works in this case just as well. I don't see any other way. So, I mean, if alternative is to surrender, then you have to ask Ukrainian people. Maybe they will prefer surrender. I say 9 out of 10 say, please surrender. Please do it, right, as soon as possible. We don't want to go through this hell anymore. Maybe that's an answer then. But I don't agree with that. I don't see that even probably overwhelming number of Ukrainians, I'd say anywhere from 60 to 70, if not more Ukrainians, want to continue the war and want to get Ukraine to the borders of 1991. That's their inspiration. And I don't know whether the surrender can even be put on the table. I really doubt that. What's your opinion, Steve?
I mean, in terms of just in terms of just the the answers, right? I mean, I think it's finding, and I think that's what's frustrating. I mean, I'm trying to, and look at it myself as what could be done differently so that we can counter these Russian attacks. And I think the only thing that can be done is continuing to invest in drone attacks on their energy capacities through oil refineries, warehouses, affecting their supply chain, weaken their economy to the point where a demoralized military and a weakened Russian economy. There's also been, reports of Putin's failing health and everything. I think that's the strategy. That sooner or later Russia will have to be forced to negotiate some kind of peace. But this guy is just so relentless that it's almost like the Wrath of Khan in Star Trek. I mean, the ship's going down, the economy's doing bad, but he's just going to keep firing, right? Because he wants to show, hey, I'm Russia and I can kill innocent civilians, so I think that's what has to happen, and I think the United States and Europe have to continue to support Ukraine. Of course, fighting two wars at one time, or middle of two conflicts, that's the concern that I have. That the
Are you,
stockpile.
you're talking about United
Iran.
States, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh, it's uh, it's a calamity of their own making. Nobody asked
Right.
United States to attack Iran.
Yeah, and I think that, that's going to be a good homework assignment for me. I'm going to try to research a little bit before next week's show to come up with ideas of what Ukraine could be doing better. But I mean, the one thing we also have to realize is that it used to be that we would look at wars and economic security and national security in different lenses. We would create war as one thing, and then we would look at the economy in another lens. But what we're seeing today is a connectivity between warfare and the economics. If you look at the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of trade is controlled by that. There's been some rumors in today's news about them looking at opening it back up again. So war in Iran, war in Ukraine is going to affect energy, food supplies, our economy, not globally. So it's not just about these localized wars. And then I think it's interesting with AI and technology, how how these technologies are changing warfare, but at the same time you're looking at the danger that it places within the U.S. and Canada and others about jobs, about the future of our economy. I'm seeing a lot of job loss out here in North Carolina, and so there's economic security. So all of these, and economic security becomes national security, and we often go back to David M. Walker about political power, economic power, diplomatic power, and cultural power. You have to really question whether Trumpism has weakened us in all four of those areas, along with the credibility of the United States of America.
Well, speaking about the war and the tragedy of war, how many human lives lost, I think that aspect of war is not being properly featured in school programs about history. history of wars. Okay, here is a 30 years war or 100 years war, so one country won, another one lost, and then there is another, there is First World War, there is Second. I think it's not enough emphasize the tragedy of human losses, losses through death, losses through losing all their possessions and becoming destitute and have to start from scratch, and generational wealth has been lost in many cases. And that aspect, for example, uh, is not emphasized enough to students, so they would understand they not just a war that one country fights another country. This country won, this country lost. It's beyond that. It's much beyond that, because even the side who won, they have enormous losses of human capital
Yeah.
and industries, and, business, every which way. So I feel that the question of I would even invent a subject besides like normal history. I would invent subject history of wars and explain what exactly war means.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you say that. I think that is an important conversation to have. Sometimes it's hard to take a look back and say, what does this mean for the future of the world order as we know, the future of the world? But traditionally, when you look at the wars that we've studied from, the modern, the last, 100 years, you had, World War One, World War Two, the Korean War, these wars, and then you eventually had, Afghanistan, well, Vietnam, Afghanistan, all those different wars. I think traditionally warfare has been, you know, air power, on the ground, front lines, uh, you know, a well-powered military, your Navy SEALs and Air Force. And now it's really changed. Wars in the United States where it was more guerrilla warfare, like going into Vietnam, was obviously a failure. We didn't win that war. I think the wars in the Middle East have been harder as well because you underestimate the resilience of these republics in there that do not want to, even though Trump said I'm going to pulverize them. But then you look at Ukraine, it's really changed because it might make it easier to go to war. If I know that I can invest in drones and I'm not going to be suffering human casualties, then what if other countries want to go to war more? So you start seeing more wars occurring across the country, less loss of human life, possibly, even though in this case we're still seeing loss of human life, which then could have another profound impact on oil prices and energy and security. So I think this is going to be a challenge moving forward. I never really imagined that drones would be used so much in war. I watch these kinds of things in Star Wars, the movies of drones and robots and things, but now we're seeing this come to fruition, and it's going to be important for our defense sectors in the United States and Canada and other countries to invest in these defense systems. But defense is changing, and this whole notion of Secretary of War, I liked it better when it was Secretary of Defense.
Mhm.
'Cause
Well, with all due respect, also what you just said about drones, don't forget that the drones is excellent attacking device against businesses, infrastructure, so on. But it has very little capacity to defend civilians against ballistic attack. So we have to distinguish very clearly between what the drones can do and what the ballistic can do. And
right.
while there is defense against drones, there is no defense against ballistic. So this is a grim reality of today's situation. It may change next month because supposedly Ukrainians will have their own ballistics, will be ready by that time and could be used against Russian targets, including Moscow itself. But there's a few weeks left before that will be available. So this 3-4 weeks now crucial. How much damage and tragedy Ukraine can still continue to absorb, unfortunately. Now, speaking about United States, there in its 250 years history, there were three major calamities. Number one, it's Civil War, Abraham Lincoln. Number two, it's Great Depression, Second World War, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And number three, it's a Cuban crisis, John Kennedy. So in all three cases, U.S. was guided by the best of the best presidents of all times, and they guarded and they guided United States through these calamities. Now came calamity number four. I wouldn't say that it's Iran war or anything. Calamity number four, it's Donald Trump's presidency. That's calamity number four. And it could be equally dangerous for the United States, whether it's a Cuban missile or the Second World War. It doesn't matter. This is calamity. And unfortunately, there is no one, because the presidency is absorbed by Trump, there is no internal or external power that can lift America out of this calamity, except that the midterm election may slightly change the picture. Really, I really hope that will happen. Steve, what would you say about this, my comments?
Well, I love the way you summarize these different calamities, from a
Yeah.
U.S. perspective. And I would have to agree with you that I think one of the greatest disruptions in the history of the United States is the presidency of Donald Trump. And I think what brought us to that point is the fact that he could be defeated by Biden and then come back 4 years later, in my opinion, shows you how weak the Democrats have been on strategy in the United States to let this happen. And Trump has been able to change the Republican Party, which used to be the party of the elite, the party of the wealthy, to be the party of the working class. At a time when AI is disrupting industries, manufacturing was decimated in America. And even though Biden tried to invest in the Infrastructure Act, it still didn't work. Trump's been able to say democratic cities, democratic states like California have not been succeeding, and I have a better plan, even though really I don't see any evidence of his plans working better than others. And I think that's a major, major setback for the United States and the world. I think up until then, we had calamities, but the one good thing about World War II was that it sent a message to the world that you could not invade another country, and that there were going to be rules of international, there was going to be a rule that no country could invade another country, and that we were going to build coalitions and try to fight against nuclear war, deter nuclear weapons. There's a movie coming out next week about that.
But wait a moment, Steve. You're talking about the world order where no other country can attack yet another country, whether it's neighbor or not. But U.S. is a first one who breaks all these rules-based systems.
Yeah, exactly.
How you
and not only U.S., Russia as well. Russia invading Ukraine. But for many, many years, it was the United States didn't just invade countries. I mean, you had to go and you look at the Persian Gulf War, right? George H.W. Bush, when I was at Emory, he made it, Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait. He came, he said, this is wrong. He went to the Congress. He built a coalition around the world, and we're going to go in and we're going to invade Iraq. And then they stopped Hussein, didn't get rid of him. Eventually, he was killed. But the reality is that there was a way of doing it. You didn't just go pick up and fire away saying, I don't need approval, I don't need input. So I'd have to push back that there used to be a way of doing it. And now it's just one person deciding for political purposes. And that's the danger, is that military power should not be used as political power or political leverage. I don't think you should send people into battle if you haven't done your homework and understand it. And so we have to understand that there's people that are going, and you cannot in the United States military, and I've heard William McRaven say this, you cannot say, I'm not going to go by the chain of command. So even though you don't agree with going to war with Iran, you have to, because your commanding officer is saying you have to go. So that's what I would say. But yeah, so you hit it on a nail. The United States is no longer living up to those World War II, post-World War II, principles.
Well, not just that. It's a U.S. Invented the world order after Second World War. It was U.S. and that's U.S. who tremendously profited from that new world order economically and financially, politically, any way. So Trump essentially is dismantling the U.S. Invented world order. So Trump is the biggest enemy in the world who dismantling the U.S. powered world order. This is incredible.
And I think it's important. I forgot to say, it's kind of a refresher in history that we went from Woodrow Wilson, kind of an isolationist foreign policy, to a more of a coalition-based foreign policy. So when you think about it at a really high level, isolationism and protectionism has never worked for the United States. What brought us to World War II and the Great Depression was the very protectionism of Wilson.
Absolutely.
Eventually was moved out of it into World War I. Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, they were not good presidents. Then you had Roosevelt came and said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And we got attacked by Pearl Harbor. I'm getting into this war. I'm going to build alliances with Britain, with all of the allies, and we're going to fight the Germans and the Japanese, and it was World War II, right? But now we're going back to an isolationist foreign policy. I don't care what the world says. I only care about America. That's very selfish. We in the United States have always been the greatest country in the world because we cared about other countries. We helped rebuild Europe after the war.
It's selfish and it's foolish at the same time.
It's short-sighted, and protectionism doesn't work. Tariffs and these kinds of things, but it's just America first policy, which I think what's brought us there is the fact that, look, we've gotten bad trade deals. We're running trade deficits. AI is killing our jobs. Manufacturing is dead. This was run by democratic cities. You had Obama in the presidency. You had all these Democrats in the presidency. So I'm going to come in as the savior. The fact that it happened after he lost, in my opinion, is the most tragic thing that ever happened to this country. The fact that we got rid of him. You and I were there on this network when we were celebrating the fact that Donald Trump lost. How could this guy come back? How could you come back after 500,000 people died under COVID? No one's even talking about that. He said he called it the China virus. He said, don't wear masks. Don't worry about it. Now they're saying Fauci's in contempt of Congress. I think Fauci did a good job saving lives. And we never talk about the lives that were saved. And we put a guy back in there that killed 500,000 people.
I remember all public appearances where Dr. Fauci appeared together with Trump and I think Dr. Birx. Three of them were, so it's not just Fauci who said this or that. It was three, so they were all acting in accord. They were all acting together. So I don't understand why there is such a attacks on Dr. Fauci. Never mind his age or so on, but it appears to me that he was not acting alone by all means. Okay, Steve, I would like to thank you for today's program.
Yeah, this was a great session. Thank you. I try to come in prepared for these. It's not easy when you come on, but I've been doing a little bit more reading, so hopefully it's showing in terms of the quality of my analysis. I think looking at the historical patterns is important as we look at the present and navigate the future, and looking forward to next week.
Have a great weekend, and to all our listeners, we'll see you on Tuesday, same place, same time. Have a great week. Bye-bye. Thanks.